Welcome back. Well, I didn't keep my promise. We are starting a bit late. I would like to thank the panelists and the moderator. Now, without further ado, I would like to give the floor to Mr. Altuğ. He is also a member of our board, and he has also been supporting us on a voluntary basis. And our panelists have also participated into the works of the working group. Thank you so much. Welcome. Today, we have invaluable panelists and listeners, audience today. So it's very easy to be a moderator today because our panelists come from the sectors, and it's a great panel in terms of diverse inclusion. There are only 2 men and 4 women, so it's quite inclusive. First of all, I would like to thank Nuran and the previous speakers. They talked about business ethics, reputation, and ESG, and they also created a roadmap. ESG has been important, has been in our lives since 1960s. However, back then, the company's values were based on financial success. And this also was reflected as the shareholder value. Since the beginning of 1980s, after the international scandals, and after the corporate problems and failures, we see that the concepts of ESG and reputation have increased. We think that business ethics and reputation and ESG must be taken together, must be evaluated together. And we cannot talk about ESG without business ethics, and without business ethics, we cannot talk about an ESG. So the greenwashing, blue washing, the pink washing concepts that we talk about today are about, situations where we see that people do not abide by the real rules of ESG and business ethics. So we have a new perception of ESG. It is based on investment, and we're talking about environmental, social, and human rights-based, governance-based investments here. And it's a discipline. And, of course, when we're talking about investment principles, we're also talking about the transformation that we are in right now. Because it is a global transformation, and we have all lived the pandemic and wars that have changed us. So now we're asking questions whether a company is going to survive, whether the company is going to help its partners, and what kind of advantage it will bring to people. There is a great quote from Tolstoy. Tolstoy, defining evil, says, a person who thinks only about his advantages, the advantages that he will get from a situation, is evil. So we will see that companies who stand behind ethics will survive. And we will see that these ethics will be important also in the future. So we're going to talk about supply chain today. We're also going to talk about risk management, which is one of the subjects of TEID, and also the risks in supply management and the management of third parties. We have always been focusing on these issues. However, this is also going to transform because the definitions will also transform, and also we're going to talk about value chain, not supply chain, but value chain. So I would like to focus on the results of the research. So I would like to give the floor to Banu. Can you please introduce yourselves and talk about your company? What do you think about the results, and are you surprised? So what is your general opinion about it? Well, thank you so much. My name is Banu Özyalçın. I work at Siemens Türkiye in compliance, Department of Compliance. and I have been working in Siemens Group for the past year and a half. I am actually a lawyer, but the last year of my career, I have focused on compliance. First of all, I would like to thank Nuran and also everyone who has contributed to this amazing research and also this event. I think that this research is extremely valuable. One of the reasons for that is, Mr. Altu, the fact that this research showed us, as Nuran mentioned, how a group of people in the average age of 41, who are also managers, now see ESG and business ethics a part of the business world and the corporate world. What does that mean? It means that from supplying of raw material and to the product, it will be valid everywhere. It is not also enough to be only a brand or a family. You need to also apply certain criteria from raw material to production. Where did you get your raw material from? How did you produce it? Did you give importance to opportunity equalities? And also, did you give importance to be honest and how much resource you have actually dedicated for that? These are extremely important criteria. So we're talking about mission-based companies and mission-based products. So the result of this research, as Nuran mentioned, showed that these concepts are not abstract anymore, but they are concrete and they are a part of our lives. And we're talking about business ethics and ESG, as you have also mentioned. These are sine qua non, and they are related to each other, linked to each other, and they strengthen each other. And these two concepts are a part of a sustainability concept. So what is sustainability? The definition of sustainability is to use the resources of today without depleting the resources of tomorrow. So ESG and the concept of business ethics are two parts of the sustainability issue. And we must actually include this actively in our daily lives. Therefore, this research is extremely valuable. And the fact that the participants are in the average age of 41 and also for them to have the same opinion shows that there is actually still hope. Well, yes, you're right. We are talking about thinking about the future and also the sustainability concept and how the ESG and business ethics are part of this concept. İnce, what was the most important result here, and what is your general opinion of the research? Can you also introduce yourselves? My name is İnce Bozokluoğlu. I work in Enka İnşaat. I would like to also start my words by thanking a few people. As a company, we have always believed that the ESG and business ethics have a certain relation to reputation, and we have tried to explain this and prove this to the higher people in the company. So therefore, this research is extremely valuable for us, and we're going to refer this in many places. I have already prepared my presentations based on this research. Well, let's talk about the result of the survey. There are many things to talk about here, but I would like to talk about how the ESG and business ethics are positioned within the companies. When you look at the results, you see that 64% of people say that they have a dedicated department within their company. At the beginning, this percentage was high for me, but even though it looks as if it's a high percentage, we see that those who participated to this survey are already aware of the importance of this issue, and we have just reached only 64%. So when you look at the general picture of Turkey, probably this percentage will be lower. In places, in companies where there are no dedicated departments, we see that the legal department or the corporate responsibility department have taken this over. So they are having, secondary responsibilities also. On the other hand, there's around 6% of establishment of ESG departments, but we see that more than 50% of the participants say that they do not have a dedicated department within their companies. So when we look at the sectors and the companies, we see that certain functions can be gathered under one roof. However, in our team, we say that there are things that might not seem so important for the higher ranking people. And sometimes these people tell their employees, hardworking employees, well, why don't you take this over too? Because they do not really understand how comprehensive or important this subject is. And they do not also understand the risks of it. Therefore, for me, these results show that most of our companies take the ESG as a corporate responsibility. They say we should do this, if we do this, we will have a positive result, etc. Of course, we need to take certain companies aside. Some companies, they even though don't gather the ESG under one department, they might, dedicate this job to a certain department and take it seriously. So I think that the senior people of a company and the people who actually define the strategic concepts of a company must see the ESG as essential. Otherwise, they will never, dedicate a certain budget for it. And their departments will not be able to meet the needs of the company. And of course, that company's performance in terms of business ethics and ESG will be low. Well, thank you so much. You have talked about the companies that do not have the enough awareness of it, and we need to talk about that. Seda, what about you? What's the most important result of this research? What is your general opinion of the research? If you can also introduce yourself and your company, please. Yes, good evening, everyone. I am proud to be a part of this research and this panel. And Nuran has shared important results with us, and I also agree with what my friends have said. In addition, the results and the different perspectives between the first ranking and the higher ranking people are different. And business ethics, ESG, and reputation investments are seen differently between these people. The first ranking people see these fields as insufficient compared to the higher ranking people. There might be a few different reasons for that, but what comes to my mind is that the first ranking people are younger and actually have higher awareness regarding sustainability, and they have higher expectation. So this is what came to my mind. On the other hand, when we look at the problems in front of ESG, we see that independent of profiles, we see that many people think that the managers do not prioritize ESG and the awareness as low. On the other hand, there are also a lack of awareness among the employees regarding ESG. The middle ranking people are complaining about not enough budget and not enough implementation. So the results show that, lack of budget and lack of implementation take us back to the first problem, which is not prioritizing this issue, and for the higher ranking people not to see it as an important subject. Well, thank you so much. Özlem, let's continue with you. What do you think was the most important result of this research? And if you can introduce yourselves. My name is Özlem Mutlu Doğan. I come from Allianz Turkey, and I am working in the Compliance Sustainability Department. First of all, thank you so much for including us into this research and for including me into this panel. So I would like to thank TEİD, to Zena and KPMG and all of the partners, and also Nuran. I listened to her speech in a very excited way. Nuran was very clear about this, but I would like to highlight this again because I see a clear message there. The employees see their companies to have low score when it comes to ESG. But when we look at the lower levels, we see that the darker green and in the top are things that are actually done in an obligatory way by the other partners, other employees. So, I mean, ESG is not seen as a strategic subject. So, the employees say, yes, I do the things that I'm obliged to about ESG, but I don't see it as a strategy. I mean, the company doesn't see it as a strategy. The higher management doesn't see it as a strategy. They don't do reporting, and even if they do reporting, they don't show this very clearly. So, I mean, the ESG and sustainability are not integrated, and therefore this means that they do not actually invest in these issues. So strategical integration and investment is quite weak. This is what the employees say, and they are actually trying to give a message to their companies. And the fact that this research highlights this is a huge asset. Well, thank you so much. Especially hearing the voices of the employees is very important. What about you? If you also can introduce yourself, that would be great. And what do you think about the result of the research? Well, good evening. My name is Eray Akdağ. I work at Borusan Holding, and we are working also. I'm also working about carbon, and I am also a representative of a holding that has conducted the research about this and other important issues. So the research is very valuable, but the presentation is also very valuable because things that you have not seen in the research, you haven't seen in the research, might be also in the presentation. So we're talking about how reputation is very strongly correlated to business ethics and ESG. On the other hand, the fact that there aren't dedicated departments is also one of the results of the research, and also the awareness of the management and also prioritization of these issues by the management are important. And the results also show who thinks what about this issue. Business ethics and ESG are important when it comes to reputation. What defines reputation? Reputation is defined by strength. However, when we look beyond that, we see that it is defined also by quality. I think that this is similar to Maslow's pyramid. After we meet our needs of art, and ESG is just like that for companies. Just like Tolstoy mentioned, we're talking about a good company and a bad company. But of course, this is not enough. We need objective and transparent research. So all of the results are important, but we see also that 3 and 4 managers believe that it's important. But when we look at the high management, we see that 20% say that it will it will not make them lose money, but reputation. So that means that they will not lose money, they will not lose the market. And this is a very high percentage. It's around 21%. So the first ranking and second ranking managers are aware of this. And there's actually a difference here when it comes to ESG. The first ranking managers say, absolutely it is a must. So we need people who actually understand this. And I think that it is also a fact that this subject is just being accepted. The traditional managers don't really accept this, or have just started accepting this. So thank you so much. Well, yes, we must highlight the issue of awareness here. We see that this is an issue that is not really completely understood by the managers. Maybe in the future, we will also prepare an ESG dictionary, because people may understand different things from sustainability, the concept of sustainability, the concept of ESG, and business ethics and leadership is also are also fields that are related to this issue. What comes to my mind when I look at the survey is that, especially what Nuran mentioned, how effective it is on the reputation and how effective on it is on the brand value. Because you are usually regarded as support departments. I mean, we are usually seen as services provided for the, commerce companies. I mean, but they see us as a department that doesn't need a budget, for example. Sometimes we do see it in the company that they do not want us to ask for a budget, for example. However, it is actually a business, an issue that is in the center of commerce. And we are always using the euphemism from Warren Buffett. He said that you spend years to build reputation, but seconds to destroy it. So reputation is actually an issue, a well that we dig with a needle, and this well can be destroyed in a second. So I would like to get your attention on a general problem. Inge, you mentioned this problem. However, I would like to give you the floor. So the ESG and business ethics are the responsibilities of different departments and companies, and they are usually secondary roles. Do you think that, how do you think the ESG and business ethics should be positioned within the companies? You can also give examples from your companies. The floor is yours, ma'am. Thank you. Well, I think that there is no such thing as ideal. Every company, every organization has different DNA. So a system that functions for a company may not function for another company. So ESG, sustainability, and business ethics needs concrete targets. Decarbonization, for example, is one of the subjects of many companies' agenda, and regarding social responsibility is also important for companies. You can, you can have help programs for 5 years or 10 years. UN Help also has a certain roof. So companies must actually create certain targets and reach these targets. So these targets sometimes can be given to dedicate to corporate communication department or supply chain management department. This varies according to the target and according to the advantage that you need to yield. So what's important here is to understand the company, the organization, and to make the targets a concrete one. We should call them smart targets, right? Yes. Well, you're saying that You can have different positioning, but what's important here, how the company takes this and how it realizes them. Thank you. Inci, what about you? Well, I do agree about reputation management. There should, you don't have to have, I mean, the companies do not have to have only one department for reputation management. Every company, every sector must have a custom-made solution about that. And I think that I was not very surprised to see that the ESG and business ethics should be managed differently when we look at the results. And reputation management is not something that you can dedicate to one person. Every employee is actually responsible of protecting the reputation of that company. Of course, certain people have high responsibilities and others have limited responsibilities. And I would like to give you an example regarding our company. We are taking the ESG, managing the ESG in the sustainability department. On the other hand, for the reputation, we are taking it as a corporate communication and within the legal department, and also investment relations and human resources. So this is actually a structure that all of these departments work on together. Of course, other departments may be included when different subjects are included. And of course, we also have a department that coordinates all this. They are not the responsible person, but the department that actually ensures that everyone takes their own responsibilities about this issue. And I mean, there are, people who are actually managing 5 or 6 departments, but other people are also included in risk management. They are evaluating their risks, and as a result of these analysis, they take actions. For example, our business developer teams come together with our customers, but they are not within the reputation groups. So what we do is that they actually are analyzed in terms of risk management, and they also have to go through different analysis. So we have actually solved the reputation management with a different mechanism. We didn't prefer to have a separate department. Thank you so much. What about you? As Banu mentioned, there is no one definition of ideal. I've realized that I did not introduce myself in the first round. I work as a sustainability manager in Coca-Cola. And let me introduce the company. It belongs to Anadolu Group, but it is also valid in 11 countries in the whole world. And when I'm Turkey, Pakistan, and Central Asia and the Middle East are the regions that we are active in, and it's a public company. I would like to talk about how our governance roadmap has developed. So the corporate managers are responsible of the reputation management, and the executive members also take certain responsibilities, and the CEO, of course, is the general authority of the sustainability issue. And our structure is similar to other companies too. We also have a committee, a sustainability steering committee. There are executive members here and general managers of all countries, 11 countries, and also there is a sustainability office, which I'm a part of. So the ESG goes through the office. However, we also have working groups, task groups, and the task groups try to make the ESG, transform the ESG into a business model. There was actually a roadmap for that. Task groups were always there. They always existed. However, in 2022, we decided to create a report about this, and we have been issuing the report since 2009, but at the beginning of 2021, we started to create integrated report. And we didn't want to only focus on the report. We wanted to also organize certain workshops in order to steer the culture within the company. And that happened, but that was the first stage. And since then, these task forces were developed, and the pandemic happened. So different issues also were valid during that period. And we have been working on this issue for the past few years. It took us a few years because we put certain targets, but also we created certain budgets and roadmaps. And we are preparing for 2030 with task groups. Now that we issued the report, we also have to measure our advancement here. So we are also updating. We have also updated the report based on our needs. In terms of environment, we also focus on waste and packaging, and also there are different task groups on different issues which work on different issues. We also have a business and professional health working group, and also we have a consultancy committee. It is composed of higher ranking members. We also have a social investment task force. We're talking about social responsibility here. So it also targets the environment too. So it has also developed at a certain point, and we continue to work on these. The task forces also issue and report to the committee. So our company is made of Anadolu Group and Coca-Cola Company. So we are one of the 250 companies that is responsible of the bottling of the product. So I'm talking about supply chain to human resources to commerce teams to human resources. So there are different teams. So we're not only talking about having, human resources in the bottling team. So we try to integrate it. So you have cross-functional teams then, departments then. Yes. I can easily tell you that we have really thought over this. And as Banu mentioned, it is not about, making promises and leave it there. We are aware of this responsibility as a public company. So it is important for these to turn into action. And we think that an answer to this is to have multiple stakeholders, because it also affects our distributors. For example, the decarbonization target affects the distributors too. On the other hand, we have a ethics manager there, but that person is from the legal department, so they have different roles. And the local part, there are also committees, and if there is a problem, the committee takes it over. If the problem escalates, then the higher ranking people take it over. So business ethics, ESG is also a part of the department here. However, we want everyone to be aware of their contribution to this under their responsibility, and it happens so. So that's great. You have a ESG model here, and you think that it's a functional model. That's great. Well, Özlem, let's continue with you. You have mentioned how when a step is taken toward ESG, it's as if, highlighted because you want it to happen, Just because Özlem wants it, it happens. So you actually talked about a problem that you're facing, and I also faced such a problem before. So how do you think ESG and business ethics must be managed within the company? Well, I agree with what's been said so far. So since there are many panelists, we agree with each other, generally speaking. So it changes based on the organization and the structure. Of course, we cannot talk about a perfect model. I would like to talk about Allianz Turkey. Usually, the departments within the companies manage the business ethics, and I can say that it is managed by the corporate communication. Before talking about ESG, let me say that a reputation is about how you are seen in the eyes of the stakeholders. I mean, for the employees, it can be the human resources. For the university students, it can be human resources. For the supply chain, it can be procurement department. And the sales department or service departments can be, functioning here. So we should not attain the ESG to one department. But of course, in our company, we have a certain center, a certain department that manages this. ESG principles come from ESG experts, and we need a certain department that will give the ESG message with the correct principles, correct messages, correct ways. Not every stakeholder will understand this. For example, a service provider will not see this will not understand the ESG in terms of its definition. So we need a department for that. So all of the stakeholders must understand this ESG in a correct way. So the department ensures that. So within the corporate communication and this corporate sustainability team work together. And all of the messages for the ESG are prepared all together within the department so that all stakeholders understand this with the right definition. The greenwashing and pinkwashing or cherry picking, I don't know what it is in Turkish, but this is a new concept I heard about. And we actually call this tweezing. So cherry picking, all of these concepts are valid. And for example, in the finance sector, we see that the number of women are high because it is in nature. So if Allianz Turkey comes up and says, well, my target is to increase the number of women working in my company, they are just doing cherry picking because it's actually in their nature, because they are already successful on that issue. So this is what cherry picking is, to highlight something you're already successful in. So the department that will prevent greenwashing or pinkwashing or cherry picking is this department where the ESG experts are working. So therefore, it is important to give the ESG message in a clear way. And in our company, it is the corporate communications department. So what happens with the other stakeholders? The sales department, for example, talks to supply chain parties. So in every department, there is someone responsible of corporate communication, and they're always in communication with stakeholders, and they tell the department also what kind of communication they should create, and they ensure the right language and the right message to be created. And in fact, they are also responsible of, taking certain subjects to the ESG department. So this is the method that we are implementing in our company, and so far we have not seen any problems, but we must highlight one issue here. The most important method to actually increase department or increase the awareness of reputation, it is to have an external auditor, so that all stakeholders can actually receive more transparent and more trustworthy messages. So now I would like to give the floor back to you. You are a very natural moderator. Thank you so much. Well, Mr. Eray, the floor is yours. Well, thank you so much. These are amazing comments, and I'm taking notes so that I can check them later because they are invaluable, really. I would like to look at this from different perspectives, and it will not be possible to talk about this from every perspective. And when you look at Borusan, you can see that they are present in 7 sectors. They are present in 30 subsectors and 3 continents. And when you say that, we're going to appoint only one reputation manager, it's not possible. We had a panel recently. Professor Seçil Deren Vanterov also attended and also talked about reputation management and its relation with the academy. And back then she said, well, I talked about this, but I'm scared that the companies will appoint only one responsible person for the reputation. And she said that reputation management is about shareholders, about CEOs. For example, the CEO is the porte-parole of the company. On the other hand, the corporate communication department is important because we have a group president that is responsible of communications and human management. However, if you actually gather 300 companies under one roof, you cannot have only one person who's responsible for this. A logistics department is different, finance department is different. While they actually manage their own sector, for example, there should be also another internal coordination within Borusan. So that is why reputation management is very sensible. So every company has its own structure and must actually renew the structure. Today, the concept of ESG or for sustainability was not the same. They had different meanings 5 or 10 years ago. The corporate social responsibility is at the brink of ending. When you look at BlackRock, you see that they are actually threatening American prosecutors, and they're saying that they do not want certain board members to work because they are not giving attention to ESG. So we're talking about 100 millions of liras, dollars. So while we are managing these funds, we're also have to talk about sustainable financing. This is actually a different part of the job. We're talking about decarbonization and the carbon taxes. On the other hand, the communication with shareholders and the public is important. We also talked about something shortly, the way we behave to our employees, or the employees' emotions about the company. That is very important because those people actually represent the companies. They are the ambassadors, natural ambassadors of the companies. Avoiding cherry picking is very important, and looking at it from a different perspective is important. For example, we are training women crane operators, and their performances are quite high. They receive special training and certification. And in the automotive sector, we have women fixers, for example, and they have a huge performance, and we're talking about the change of the world. So every company, by supporting this transformation, will also develop their own companies. On the other hand, the cross-functional functioning is very important here for the reputation management. Your example is very good. For example, every department have their own communication officer, because even if it's the communication department itself, they need to have someone that's responsible for it, because they need to look at it from different perspectives. I had a meeting, for example, with a company, and I saw that there is a new jargon, for example, and they're saying, well, this CDP reporting must change the ISP issue that was given by the EU. So this is actually a sentence that doesn't have meaning for everyone. We need an expert for that. For example, a company was talking about how they have been talking about working on sustainability for the past a year and a half, and they were talking about where they can actually plant a forest so that they can actually have the yield in a short time, and how they can also have the advantage of carbon tax. So this is something that needs experts. So I'm sure that you will also talk about the regulation. So the compliance also is taking us another way, to another direction. So I think that it is important to talk about this with people. Thank you so much. Well, absolutely. In different companies, there are different departments, and there's a collaboration model, awareness model between these departments. What we see in the discipline is tone from the top and tone from the middle. So this was actually at the top at the beginning, but then it came down to the middle. So we're talking about ESG experts. They are the best experts. Even if there are best experts, best auditors, if a company does not take the ownership of this subject, no ESG department or program will be successful. So this is my question now. We see that the awareness among managers is low, and we see that the ESG is not really prioritized within the business management. Therefore, in order to increase the awareness of ESG and to see this as a part of ethics culture, what can we do? And maybe there are certain best practices within companies. So if you can give certain examples, Banu. Well, thank you so much. Well, I would like to go back to what I have said before and give you an example from our company, Siemens. We are quite lucky to be within this group, to set a target and also to integrate this target to every employee is very important. And for the ESG to be a living concept. And this is what we're doing in the global companies. We call this degree framework, and we have certain steps that we take under this. And we also have targets for every function, for every employee, for every department, and for every group. So we are giving these targets to all of these parties. Let me explain what degree means. D is decarbonization. 2030, 2050 are the target years, and it also targets to decrease carbon emissions and also the emissions that come from that results from our production, and also to decrease the carbon emission within the sector by 2050. So when we're talking about this target, every employee, every technology, from supply to demand, all employees must have this as a target. And this way they feel they belong to this target, to this company, and they're proud of being a part of this target, this mission. On the other hand, in the degree word, the E is for ethics. It is about ownership of business ethics in every decision that we make. And ethics is something that we do, that what is correct for everyone. So in Siemens, within the decisions that we take, we are trying to take this as a compass. And as long as we can say that I was able to take this decision, make this decision based on ethics, then we can create this ownership and this sense of belonging to the company. The other letter is G, which is governance. So in the management of all of our companies, we are trying to reach certain standards, corporate standards, and this also is a sine qua non of ESG, and we are trying to set the targets for the admin staff. R means resource efficiency, and this is for supply chain and decarbonization. So we can say that it is the other side of the medallion here for the supply chain. E for equity, which means that we want equality of opportunities between the employees and also protect the disadvantaged groups. And we are trying to represent equity in every department, and every manager has actually a target, a KPI for that. And the last E is employability. What does that mean for us? Employability means is to train the employees all the time and make them equipped against a world that keeps changing. I mean, we all went through certain crises, and especially since the pandemic, we have been in a world of VUCA. So we must support the employees through training, or even it can happen with external trainings. But what's important also is to support them psychologically. Because the VUCA environment that we are in, maybe some of you don't know, it means an environment that changes all the time, and it's an environment with many crises. So in a VUCA environment, sometimes people, all of us, need mental support. So if we do not support our employees psychologically, then their performance will decrease, and then our performance will decrease, and we won't be able to reach our ESG targets. And all of these are sine qua non for sustainability. This is the way we work. And similarly, we do not have actually an ESG department. All of our departments, all of our functions are a representative of ESG. This is how we implement this concept. Well, I guess if ESG were a department in your company, it would be very crowded, the most crowded department. Yes, exactly. This is the first time I hear degree. In law, we say including but not limited to. So this is what you actually mean by degree. You also talked about VUCA, which is very important for us too. And I mean, it is very important for the employees to talk about things correctly, accurately, and it is also important for the employees to be in a healthy state of mind. Well, what about you? What do you do in your company? Can you share best practices? Well, in order to have a transformation about ESG in a company, first of all, we need to have top-ranking people to have the awareness. Years ago, when we first started off with the sustainability journey, we had to explain the partners while we were doing that, because back then there was no legal expectation, and we had to convince them. And we talked about how the definition of a successful company changed in the years. And first of all, at the beginning, the company had to have good finances and must have abided by legal rules. These were enough. However, right now we see that people expect that for the companies to be transparent and for them to listen to their shareholders, to also manage environmental and social effects, and to decrease the effects that they can, and to create positive effects. So these expectations from all shareholders, partners, and customers also require, of course, reporting, and I think that this awareness is extremely important for the top management. So at the beginning, we started off focusing on the academy, and our biggest helper was the academy, because we created certain strategies. However, we needed the supply chain and the employees to understand this. Therefore, we organized many trainings and events. We still do, but back then it was more intense. Especially since we are a company based on engineering, we also had to train the engineers to have the certain capacity for that. Just like you have mentioned before, we have also taken advantage from the internal communication too. And this way we created certain channels where the employees can speak their minds. And we have many blue-collar employees in our company. And when someone is going to start work, we usually, brief them about what they have to pay attention to. And now, in terms of ESG, we talk about this issue both in the work that they are going to do in a daily manner or in their daily lives, and we also talk about what they can actually teach their children at home. In addition to that, we also have placed ESG in our performance indicators, because after some point, the trainings are forgotten and you can forget the skills that you gain from them. However, the performances of departments, when they are linked to these criteria, then both the employees and the managers have them in their agenda. And we have been doing that in the supply chain and in subcontractors in the past years. This way, we are able to have the employees and the partners to have the ESG a part of their agenda, not only to have the ESG as a concept. And they start to talk about the ESG in their daily lives. And when that happens, you can change the culture within the company. So this is the way we actually chose. Well, that's great. We're going to talk about this supply chain later. However, you have actually allocated the ESG into the performance indicators. Yes, exactly, and into KPIs too. That's great. Seda, what do you do in order to increase awareness? Do you have any suggestions? Well, I do agree about the problem that came out in the result. First of all, the top management must take ownership. There are certain departments, for example, Global Compact departments about that. For example, our CFO became a part of the task force here. And this also sends a message to the people who work in the financial department. This says that ESG is not actually an independent subject. And our CEO, Burak Başarır, in 2020, was a part of LEAD network, and this is actually a network that supports women, and he signed their work, and he actually gave the promise, made the commitment to increase the number of women working in the company until 2025. So all of the responsible departments also signed it and taken over this responsibility for different countries. We have all talked about this other issue. The environmental and social problems are more visible now, and it actually gives an advantage for the company itself. And among our commitment by 2030, after we issued the commitments and we had prepared the budget, and when we issued it, we were able to list the KPIs in a clear way, and we were able to appoint the ambassadors here, and we were able to talk to 11 different leaders, and we integrated also their work. So we told them, this is until 2030, but we also expect you to integrate by 2023. On the other hand, you talked about sustainable financing. In 2022 January, as Coca-Cola beverage, we issued a bond indexed on sustainability worth of $500 million. And it's the first bond that was issued indexed on sustainability in Europe, Middle East, and Africa. And it is actually something that we are very proud of and that we learned from. It is a public company, and investors also care about our environmental performances and social performances alongside finance performances. So with this bond, we were able to link our water efficiency to a fund, to a bond. So this way we were able to put this in our finances. So you're talking about green financing. Yes. So we have actually realized a first in our sector. On the other hand, cultural change is important. In the past, it was less, but right now the awareness is higher right now. Sustainability is not only about environment or corporate responsibility. In the past, that was the case. People were using this, were limiting this. Limiting their actions to that, and we have to also accept this. Everyone needs to understand that what they do, whatever they do, is linked to sustainability. So, together with our employees and partners, we're doing capacity building training. We're also trying to increase sustainability literacy. And we also organize panels every 3 months. I can give more examples, but I don't have much time. I just wanted to give you a general view. Therefore, in our implementation, we can see that we're doing that exactly. For example, our distributors also have a roadmap for 2030. And we have been talking about partnerships with our customers more than the past. Everyone has certain demands. Everybody wants to do something. In Azerbaijan HoReCa sector, meaning the hotel sector and tourism sector, we are trying to engage volunteers to collect plastic and garbage. Packaging is one of our priorities, so plastic waste is being collected there. Last but not least, strategy, targets, and business plans, and cultural transformation and transparency is what actually closes this link, closes this cycle. We have been issuing a sustainability report, and since 2021 we have been issuing our integral report. And we have also been reporting to ESG platforms, and it is voluntary based. This way, we are able to work together with all partners in the value chain, and we are able to close the cycle. And we are also doing external guarantee together with bonds. We are able to also keep or check the environmental data of all of our places, facilities in different countries, and we have actually extended this research recently. So a third party, when it comes to energy, waste, and carbon emission, check this data. And we actually gave one data of carbon data to one company, and we gave the other data to another company so that we can cross-check. That's great. What about you, Özlem? What can we do in order to increase awareness? Well, we're talking about awareness, and when we're talking about awareness, we must talk about cultural transformation and how the top management should own it. And I would like to talk about the transformation story of Allianz Türkiye. For the past 5.5 years, right after the first steps of sustainability was taken, I entered Allianz Türkiye. In 2016, a transformation started within the company, and we are the first company that created the first sustainability office, first company that issued a sustainability report and created a committee. This committee actually is composed of middle and lower ranking employees, and it was mostly based on volunteerism. And as we have mentioned before, when we're talking about professional health or corporate responsibility, many departments can do that, but we have actually gathered all these steps in that regard in 2010. And we were able to actually clean the front of our door and clearly see what we need. So while we were taking certain actions, for example, when we are issuing an environmental policy, someone in that department would come to me and would say, Özlem, look, we did what you're asking us to do. But this is not what I asked for. I mean, this is actually something that needs to be done for the whole business. And, they come to us from department, corporate responsibility department, and tell us, look, we did what you asked us to do, but it was a need, and it was not easy to tell them this message. So as a organization, we cleaned the front of our door and we reached certain maturity. I'm sure that there are similar stories in your companies too. And in 2020, we decided that we have to go one step beyond and need to change our perspective. And while we were changing our direction, we said what needs to be done from leading to shaping. So shaping the ecosystem. So what that means is that you have to transform the way you do business. It also means that you need to transform the shareholders, your shareholders. And this is actually a very important step. This was a beginning of a very important step, and it also had other demands. In this transformation, the most important step was to proceed to the integrated reporting. Since we are, although we are not open to investment, we started doing integrated report. This is actually an output. It is an output of an integrated thought. And it actually takes ESG collectively, holistically, and all functions in the company, all the departments in the company know where they stand in the value creation. And they know how they are positioned, whether it's for environment, for the society. They know for who they are actually creating that value. And integrated report for us in this transformation meant to include partners, shareholders, especially when we wanted to proceed into the transformed ecosystem. And at one point, you're not only talking about the output, but also the effect of what you're doing. So we have also transformed our governance model. How did we do that? We transported our committee to C-level. So that committee that was voluntary-based became more C-level, and it has a matrix-based structure right now. There is a department there, but there was actually a problem of coordination there. So we fixed that, and there were people there who were responsible of ESG or ESG operations and also ESG investments. So there were key people who actually participated in the committee. But of course, the C-level people, on top of these people, were also included in the committee as decision makers. So what happened? This way, we actually was able to talk about this at the top management level. The committee comes together twice a year, and we saw the transformation here. We witnessed the transformation here. We saw that people were able to take more courageous steps. Ahu is here too. She is also a part of it. Iram is also here. She is also a part of it. So there was a serious transformation. On the other hand, the internal communication is extremely important when it comes to awareness. I mean, when you talk, we're not only talking about you should change your carbon steps, etc. You need to give the right message within the internal communication. And you must also prioritize certain subjects within ESG, and you have to clearly send the message. This also helps the company and the employees to to have the ownership of this subject. I will give you another example. For example, every year we issue an ESG bulletin for the top managers, for bulletins and members of the board. And in this bulletin actually includes important developments regarding ESG, and we do it very simply because they don't usually read it, and we do not include every detail. We're just including the details that would be in their own agenda that would also affect the sector and the stakeholders. So we talk about reports, trends, important developments. So we issue a separate ESG bulletin. It may seem like not a very important step. However, it is essential to enter the agenda of the top managers. And this does not only concern the key people, but also all employees. It is also important to contribute to their training and to their awareness. We have been talking about this for a very long time, but in 2023, in February, we're going to start an online training for our employees. It's going to be a sustainability training. So it is a holistic approach, and all of the parts are sine qua non. So it is not easy to talk about only one part, and it is not right to dream about a transformation that can happen overnight. It's important to work in that regard, and sometimes succeeding and failing in order to find the right way is a justified model, but it's all important. Well, thank you so much. You're so right. We should not also forget about the human factor here, because no matter what policy we're issuing, it's the people who are going to implement it. And it is also important to increase awareness of people of how they're going to take certain steps. For example, foreign corruption, fight against foreign corruption, this is also an issue. So we need to ask people to have analysis and also ask about data metrics. So we need to have people who are going to measure the culture and also the awareness, to measure the awareness of people. Well, Mr. Eray, Borusan Academy is an amazing structure within your company. What kind of examples can you give us today? Well, thank you so much. Well, I mean, when we look at all the examples, I can say that our example is also very similar to yours. So when we filter it, we see that there's actually a strong message and sustainability. These two concepts, without them, we cannot reach anything. And when we look at tools, we're seeing that it has to be a multi-perspective tool. In the past, the president of our board gave two important messages. One of the messages was given to all groups, and he said that in his message, we as a 200-year-old company must do everything in our hands to do anything about this. So he also talked about sustainability, and he said that I'm asking you to have challenging targets. So the challenging targets concept is very important. Just like cherry picking, you cannot say, we were doing this already and we have increased it by 1.2%. This cannot be accepted anymore. On the other hand, our group president also gave a message here, and she said that she gave this message not only once, but a few times to top managers. So the message given to general managers and to blue-collar employees are different, because we must have different stage of messages here. We have, of course, committees based in the business. We also have boards. So we need to understand who's going to report to whom. And we have signed an agreement recently, as I have mentioned before. we have a new jargon here. We're saying, we have to actually pay attention to a taxonomy here. What kind of taxonomy? EU taxonomy. So it is actually a difficult jargon here. So we need legal partners, and we signed an agreement with legal partners, and they talk to us about what is ESG, what is taxonomy, because we took over Borçelik, for example, but we need to see if it's green or dark green, if they have KPIs or not. So should I go to Akbank or Garanti? These are the questions that we're asking. So training is very important. So a strong message, and then trainings are important. Within Borusan Academy, also, there are different subjects that we are focusing on. When we put the sustainability in the center of business ethics, we said that we're going to continue with E cubic meters, which is sustainability +3. So if you do not concentrate on these three important subjects, then you do not have any effect. So on the other hand, as you have mentioned before, Global Compact is very important, and we have been, a part of it for a long time, and we have become also a leading actor for the integrated reports. I mean, people talk about how they combine integrated report with financing report, but it doesn't work that way. If you need to do an integrated report that is cross-functional, then you have to see what you are affecting. In the past, we used to say, well, yes, there is global warming, so this energy company revised its budget and they're going to have this effect. This is the way we looked at it. It was quite material. Right now, what's important here, it's double materiality, how it affects my work and how my work affects the whole world, and how can I optimize my work. So we need to look at this from a cross-functional perspective. I think that what's important here is to also touch people. So now, in order to attract people's attention, I always look whether the ESG is there. From the secretary to sustainable expert to ESG. From IT, for example. IT is dashboard. We're working IT dashboards. And it's very important to have live data. And also, it has also become, sustainability has also become an important KPI for top management. This also means cash. For example, right now, when I'm building a renewable energy facility, I'm also contributing to the world. So these are actually the examples that I can give. We need to transform ecosystems, because if ecosystems don't transform, then I will also have a problem. So everyone has to do that. So from financing company to insurance companies, we must do this all together. And we must we must also include our value chains and supply chains. A company's message was that they actually announced their science-based targets, and they went to their supply chain partners and they said, if you want to work with me from now on, you have to sign this commitment, and these parts where you are going to have problems, I will help you out. But if you do not sign this, we're not going to renew our contract. So as the country, as the sector and companies, we have to change together. That's great. Well, now we are at the last question, thanks to you, because you are a natural moderator. You talked about supply chain, and as the Ethics and Reputation Society, supply chain is very important for us. And we have been also working on a guide on this issue with the contribution of our president. So in the business ethics and compliance, we're not only following the laws, but we are also following the regulations, the things that are not regulated under the law. and we are interpreting these regulations, and there are actually common basic characteristics here. The law says you are not only responsible of your employees, you are also responsible of another aspect. Just like recruitment processes, you have to also recruit your supply chain partners, and you have to also create opportunities for them, and you're also responsible of what they do. So we always say that a company is as strong as their weakest link. So we have to include our supply chain partners in the sustainability issue, and therefore there are many regulations right now. For example, the supply chain law and sustainability directive, and there is also a new regulation in Germany and the US. So we see that it is something that is being regulated by the law. And the third parties' relations need to be taken under focus now. Their companies' contracts with supply chain partners, and also the programs that they actually include them into. So all of these are being regulated. So in this light, what can you say about the regulations that have been increased in that regard? And in order to have also the ESG in the third-party relations, what kind of steps needs to be taken, and what kind of examples can you give? And then later we'll proceed to the Q&A session. Well, Banu, what can you say about this? Well, the third-party relation management, especially in the supply chain management, I can say that they are the sine qua non of ESG. We talked about sustainability and its effect on reputation. And when we look at it from that perspective, I said that people do not only look at the brand or the family behind the brand. You have to also see when you're producing a product, how you're producing it, from raw material to production, and what's its effect on the environment or other conditions. So in that regard, you might think that you're doing the right thing, or you are doing the right thing. But if your supply chain or the institutions, companies that are providing you with raw material or any other product, if the third party that you have chosen to work with do not abide by certain criteria, then their bad implementations, it can be, violation of human rights, violation of children's rights. So then it means that you are defending, you're supporting the wrongdoing by these people. You are financing this wrongdoing by these parties. So from raw material to supply to demand, there's a value chain, and you must be sure of every step. If you're talking about ESG, if you're talking about sustainability, from A to Z, you need to see this as a chain. So it is actually a sine qua non. And right now, the German supply chain regulation has been issued, and probably Turkey's regulations and laws will also follow up on that. I'm sure you know. Will also go in that direction, because sometimes governments or states can be insufficient, and they ask actually help of the private sector. So the state says that please control your supply chain parties, so that my sector can be checked. So as Siemens, we are lucky again, because we have a policy for auditing the third parties, and it has been there for a very long time. And ESG is actually one of the most important pillars of this mechanism. And as you have mentioned also, we do not work with parties that do not commit to our values. So we are at a different point now, because we have been working that way for a very long time. So global trends show that there will be more regulations, and you're saying that your structure is also already there. Yes, exactly. Well, you're lucky you. What about you? I agree. I think that the global trends will seriously increase, and the performance and risk analysis of supplier chains within the ESG will be a part of our agenda. However, I would like to look at this from another perspective. Even though there is no legal obligation, the performance of a supplier directly or indirectly affects the ESG performance of a company. For example, let's take the construction sector. A supplier or a subcontractor's environmental performance will be a part of our natural performance as a company. And when we are reporting, we are also including the emission data or energy usage of our suppliers as if it is our own performance. So what does that mean? So the performance of our suppliers must be a part of our sustainability policy from the very beginning, because in a world where they fail in their performance, we cannot talk about a successful sustainability policy for our company. So we have actually created a department for that, and then focused on the sustainability. And we assess the risks based on the sectors and the country. And later, we have prepared the pre-assessment criteria for our suppliers. So, of course, these pre-assessment criteria change based on the companies. For certain companies, since if they are important for us in critical operations, they have more criteria. For others, we have more flexible criteria. And after completing these processes, we have signed contracts with our suppliers based on the ESG criteria that we have prepared. And when these companies started to work in our fields, what was important for us was the capacity building. Especially in the pre-assessment side, the performance of our companies also must be analyzed, and we check if there's room for improvement. And we also support these suppliers in order to improve themselves. The countries that we work in, unfortunately, are not really aware of ESG, or legally speaking, they do not have the necessary framework. And what does that mean is, when you're working with local suppliers or subcontractors, you see that the companies that you are in contact with are not even aware of ESG. They haven't heard about ESG. So before pre-assessment criteria, you have to also help them to create capacity building. And sometimes you have to do this for companies that you will never work with. So this is not only a part of our performance, but also a responsibility, our responsibility where we exist as a market. So first of all, we have to sometimes build the capacity and then have a partnership. Of course, after starting working with them, you have to do regular reporting. You have to also share the inputs. You have to also audit and have a certain level of performance check. I talked about suppliers because they are the risk for us. However, we also work with our customers in a similar way. Especially, we're trying to find more sustainable solutions when it comes to design. So we do not see this as an additional work area, but we see it as a part of our business. In any case, some of our customers, have advanced view on this, and some of our customers need help. So from choosing a material to a production, we are trying to support our customers in terms of sustainability. So this is also a contribution for the way we do work. I mean, it doesn't mean if ENCA alone changes or any company changes alone, the whole company or the whole sector ecosystem must change together, and this is the way we try to contribute. Well, that's amazing. And maybe it's important, especially when it comes to direct the customers. Yes, we have certain things in common. And of course, value chain is very important within the supply chain. And we, of course, are indirectly affected. And I think that system change is very important. We are all in the common ecosystem. For example, our decarbonization includes raw material supply, packaging supply, and also facilities. But the products also are being distributed and sold. So the supply that is outside of the product is under our indirect effect, and we included that in our sustainability policy. And on the other hand, I can say that we also have two guides for our suppliers. One of them is for the sustainability supplying, and the second one is the sustainability agriculture. And this has been, these are actually works that were designed by other companies, but we take them also references. And if we have, direct customers, they are obliged to sign this. And after they sign this, they also are audited by third parties. And if there are incompliances, then they have to improve their work, and after a while they need to come to that standard. This is the process for the beginners. If we are already working with a supplier, in different periods we audit these suppliers. We do not let it go after working with them months. There are different statuses in green or orange. If it's orange, then they are audited 3 or 6 months later. And if it's a subject that actually they are not good at, it might also affect their contracts. So the criteria are based on environmental, social criteria, and business ethics criteria. So from violation of children's rights to waste management, there is actually a very comprehensive auditing. In agriculture, there is also the suppliers of agriculture go through the same checks. There are also different certifications, for example, rainforest alignment certification. And there's also a sustainable agriculture platform. So if a supplier received a certification from these platforms, we accept them as the third party supplier. In Turkey also we started off such a certification, and we support suppliers to become sugar producers and certified sugar producers. On the other hand, we have also a project that we started off with the Development Bank for our distributors, and this actually helps suppliers to become a part of the criteria. And during the pandemic, it stopped for a while, but in 2022, it was implemented again, and now it's being extended. Last but not least, our efforts on the side of the suppliers have continued since 2020. We have invited our suppliers to a certain platform, and we were keeping a scorecard for sustainability for our suppliers, but we extended it, and we asked the suppliers to give us more information about environment. And right now, we are at the stage of encouraging them. We have also started our carbon transparent program, and we have received an A score in 2021. Well, that's great. I know about your EBRD program. Ertuğ is our former president, and he has worked on this for a while, and he had sent it to us as an example. Thank you so much. And scorecards are very important when it comes to encouragement and implementation and also changing, transforming the suppliers. Özlem, let's continue with you. Well, we do not have much time, so I would like to give you a few examples. We are a financing company, and our relationships with our suppliers are different compared to the producer companies. However, the business ethics and fight against corruption are very important for us. And a year and a half ago, we have started a program. And within this program, we have started checking our key suppliers. And there are different dimensions such as environment, social, and governance. However, we do this together because our target is not to leave them in the midway. You know, this is actually a process. So we want them to transform as we transform. So this is our perspective. And with that perspective, we are in a transformation process with our key suppliers. In addition to that, when we're talking about ecosystem, we're talking about the transformation of all stakeholders. When you look at the suppliers, your partners and also customers are also a part of your stakeholders. I would like to give you a short example of what we do on that. In February, we are going to start providing a new service regarding environment and climate change. There's a new department. So what are we going to do within this department? We're going to help these SMEs. As you know, there's actually a new European regulation and tax obligations, and we're going to support the SMEs in this transformation. So this is not going to include only the suppliers, but all stakeholders. So in order to transform the whole ecosystem. Thank you so much. Eray, what do you think about this issue? I will give you a few examples. Well, we're doing something here that is very important. We must follow up on the regulation. This is the most important thing that we should do. Of course, there are some legal obligations, and this actually brings certain needs and certain resources. And there's a very fast transformation globally, both in the EU and the US and in Turkey. So what we're doing is that in addition to following the regulation, within the ESG scope, we actually created a new following channel. So we are informing all the companies and its departments when it comes to ESG regulation. There is also a sanction group that we have prioritized for a very long years, and based on our new definition, we have actually revised our compliance because a few years ago we have already reached that point, and now we are revising our processes. And here we're also informing our auditors and our in-house auditors, because the thing is, the implementers really follow up on the auditors, so we need to also regulate that. I have talked about how we need to encourage people. We talked about Impact Hub, and we are also supporting certain platforms in order to encourage people, and we're going to have a new entrepreneur platform. So this way, we increase the importance of this issue. Borçelik, for example, is a Turkey-based company, but they sell to Ford. And when Ford does export, they need to have an EU regulation, EU standard. So our regulation department must check 70 countries and also see the expectations of the suppliers. So within this adaptation, we are also focusing on consultancies and also focus on gap analysis. And for example, for a logistic company in the future, maybe we will have a need for a hydrogen-based truck. So this is a very extensive perspective. For example, well, when I'm just poking the port, for example, I'm not, following up on their work, but I'm trying to create a synergy here, because if their team in the port can contribute to our work, then Borçelik can also benefit from it. So from A to Z, from end to end, you are supporting a transformation. I would like to thank all panelists. It was a very informative panel. I also learned a lot. Now, let me ask the audience, do you have any questions? Well, do you have any questions to the panelists? Don't ask me any questions. Well, by the way, we have actually shut down the screen in order to protect the environment. This is also a good example. Well, you have also a sensitivity to ESG. I can see that. Do you have any questions? I guess not. Everything was clear. Well, thank you so much for your patience. Thank you. Thank you. I would like to thank our speakers and to all of you for being with us here today.